B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach. Hello, Achim Yekarim, how are you? Hope everything is well. Hope you're enjoying the holiday. Hanukkah is upon us, the day, holiday full of miracles. But also at the same time, we're coming up on the end of the secular Christian year, end of year 2016. Many people have very little understanding and knowledge about our history. And as we always say, there's always a connection of what's happening in the world, either as a whole for our nation or independently, connected to our weekly parasha. Now, weekly parasha, Parashat Miketz, is the second half of the story of Joseph and his brothers after they sold him. And this week's parasha begins with Joseph's salvation. Hashem decides that he spent enough time in jail, 12 years in jail, and now he's taken him from the absolute bottom of the barrel to becoming the viceroy of Egypt in a matter of moments. Literally a matter of moments. They even says in the beginning of the parasha that they hurried him, meaning they ran him all the way from the jail, all the way to Paro, in order to translate the dream. And then after Paro sees Joseph's divine wisdom that Hashem gave him, he says this in chapter 41, verse 44. Pharaoh says to Joseph, I am Paro, and without you, no man may lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And here, Paro makes Joseph the viceroy. He makes him second in command. In essence, he's telling him that, hey, listen, now that you're here, now that you're going to be the viceroy, you have the complete job. In essence, you do everything, you run everything, you have the wisdom, you have everything, you run the show. And in essence, you become king. And the only one that could override you is me, but I'm not really interested in doing anything anymore. So this is something extraordinary. This is something that we see ourselves sometimes, where people today feel like little mini Josephs, where they have a lot of success in life, their business is growing, their reputation is growing, their popularity is growing, and all of us get a big head, and we start developing partnerships with some people that are not necessarily the same type of partners we would have made in the beginning of our journey. We start making friends with some people that are not necessarily the type of friends we would have made in the beginning of our journey. And unfortunately, in today's world, there's so much confusion about what's happening, is that sometimes you see things that are completely confusing, that on one end are actually part of the prophecies of what's going to happen at the end of times, as it says in the Gemara Masechet Sotah, page 49, where it says there's going to be a lot of confusion, and literally things are going to be the opposite of what they're supposed to be, where our leaders are going to work against us. And sometimes you see in the news these strange articles about so-called Orthodox rabbis that are making partnerships with the Christian world. Aside from the fact that many of the articles are fake, nonetheless, even the ones that are real are not necessarily what they seem to be. But regardless of that, whether people believe them, whether it's happening, not happening, this is something we all have to understand, and what's connecting all of this to this week specifically. In the next short while, we're going to go to the book of Exodus. And the book of Exodus begins with Parashat Shmot. Parashat Shmot is the beginning of our slavery. And we see in the beginning of Parashat Shmot, chapter 1, verse 8. And it says, Vayakam melech hadash al Mitzrayim asher lo yada et Yosef. A new king arose over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And Chazal says, what do you mean he didn't know Joseph? This is the same Joseph that built the country. When Joseph came there before he was viceroy, okay, Egypt was like, it's a nice place. It was like Florida. It was like maybe a part of New York. But after Joseph came and built it, it became, United States. It became rich, prosperous. The whole world was bound to it and paying it taxes. It was the rule of the world. How could you not remember Joseph? And as a matter of fact, the Egyptians started idolizing Joseph and wouldn't let him be buried outside of Egypt. And they actually put his tomb inside the Nile River. And they would pray to the Nile River with Joseph being inside the river. So how could this be that he forgot Joseph? And Chazal says he didn't really forget Joseph. In reality, he forgot him conveniently. It wasn't convenient for him anymore to have a relationship with this Joseph, with the history of Joseph, whether it was the same Pharaoh or a different Pharaoh, it doesn't really make a difference, because the reality is that neither one could have forgotten the same person that built the country. It's like an American, at least in previous generations, you tell them, you know who George Washington was, you know who Abraham Lincoln was, you know who Thomas Jefferson was, you know even who Bill Gates was. Not that he necessarily built America, but just to give people understanding. I mean, these are people that you can't just forget. Even the most ignoramus person would know who these people are. So how could you forget the guy that built the country, put you on the map? It's not convenient to remember this relationship with the Jews anymore, because we already made our money, we already got what we want. Now, aval litchak ma'em. Let's confuse them, let's turn them into slaves before they actually overcome us, before they become too powerful with us. Let's call their country a illegal state, an occupied state, like the Machshimam, the United Nations, did this past week to the nation of Israel, to the Eretz Israel, saying that our country is illegal. So now it's not convenient for them. So what does this have to do with everything? You see, my dear brothers and sisters, our story starts thousands of years ago. And halacha that Hashem himself said, it starts already with Esav and Yaakov. And let's not be fooled. Esav and Yaakov were brothers, yes, close, born out of the same mother, born at the same time. Everything was wonderful. But in the end, halacha is Esav soneh et Yaakov. Esav hates Yaakov. Esav could only tolerate Yaakov up to a certain point. As soon as that point is reached, as soon as there's no more need, then Esav no longer needs Yaakov, and Esav can become very, very mean, very vicious. And the reason why we mention it is because this week we are about to end the secular year 2016 and 2017, and many Jews have no idea what they're about to celebrate. As a matter of fact, in many places around the world, New Year's Eve is not called New Year's Eve, but rather Sylvester. And if anyone spends even 2 minutes on the internet finding out who this Sylvester character is, they would see that if you travel back a couple of thousand years and you see the history, back in those days, Sylvester was one of the founders of Christianity, in a sense that he put it in the next level by combining Christianity with the Romans. Romans were pagans, they were idol worshippers, but they had the strength, they had the power. And Sylvester the First convinced the Roman Caesar Constantinos to, in essence, become a Christian, to follow the New Testament. But as part of that relationship also included to completely wipe out the Torah, completely wipe out the Jews, and celebrate this day on a yearly basis. And what do? Which day do they choose to celebrate? They chose the day to celebrate the day that Sylvester died. In essence, his birthday, his death day. They celebrate this day each year, called December 31st, as a day that they're going to, that's the New Year's. Now, even though over the last couple of thousand years, you can see that the New Year's has changed multiple times, because the Christian calendar is not really a precise calendar. It's changed multiple times. It used to be celebrated in March, and then at other times at different parts of the year, and then eventually about 500 years ago, it came back to being celebrated. New Year's Day became January 1st once again. But nonetheless, this whole celebration of New Year's, it has a foundation that's not only from a pagan root, but also from an anti-Semitic root. The very day that Jews are celebrating, by going to Times Square, going to get drunk like fools, going to parties, celebrating, is the very same day that Sylvester used as a special holiday for him to give his people full permission to do whatever they want, including murdering tens of thousands of Jews on a regular basis each and every single year, to such an extent that during their journeys they would literally look for synagogues in different Jewish communities so they could put them all into the synagogues and burn them alive. Why are we getting so graphic with this? Because the only way we get the point. It's the only way we understand what we're about to do. You're going to drink l'chaim like it's a good day, but in reality, if you look at your great-grandparents, they will be rolling in their grave in tears if they knew that we're celebrating this today. So now, my friends, the question is this. How do we tell everyone? Some people today think that you're not allowed to be a mochiach, to be someone that rebukes people or tells them the truth. Well, as a matter of fact, if you tell every Jew, even if they're the most secular person on earth, are you allowed to eat pig? Every single Jew, even the one that's eating it, will tell you I'm not allowed to eat pig. Some choose to eat it anyway, but everyone knows, according to the Torah, you're not allowed to eat it. Well, just like not eating pig is a mitzvah in the Torah, it's one of the 613 mitzvot, there's also another mitzvah that's in the book of Leviticus, Parashat Kedoshim, chapter 19, verse 17. It says, you shall not hate your brother in your heart. You shall reprove your fellow and do not bear a sin because of him. Lo tisna et achicha bilvavecha, ocheach tochiach et amitecha, velo tisa alav chet. It says, first and foremost, don't hate your brother in your heart. Keeping the truth away from him is hating him in your heart. Because sometimes you say, listen, maybe he doesn't deserve to know the truth. Maybe he can't handle the truth. Not allowed to do that. Aside from that, there's obviously other types of hates in your heart, jealousy and so on. But aside from that, it says you must reprove your fellow. You must reprove your brother. If you see your brother is violating Shabbat, you have to tell him. If you see your brother is stealing, you have to tell him. If you see your brother is cheating, you have to tell him. But most importantly, if you see your brother is about to go do l'chaim on New Year's Eve, celebrating, in essence, the ancient Hitler from 2,000 years ago, you have to tell him, hey, my friend, hey, my brother, hey, my fellow Jew, hey, even my fellow Christian who doesn't believe in the previous horror show that your ancestors had, you know you're about to celebrate the worst type of anti-Semitism the world has ever known. The one that was by the Romans and then the ones that was by the Christians combined. The ones that destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. And the ones that have put us in exile for the last 2,000 years. The one that has burned tens of thousands of Jews on a yearly basis as a holiday, as a celebration. Do you know? Do you know that that's what you're about to celebrate? No, I'm not connected to that. I'm just going to have some fun with my friends. Okay, so why don't you do it on Tuesday? Why don't you do it on Wednesday? Why don't you do it on any other day? Why don't you do it on December 28th? Why don't you do it on January 15th? Why don't you do it on Rosh Hashanah? Why don't you do it any other day? Well, you have to go that day? And this is where reality comes in. This is what we have to understand. You must rebuke your friends. You have to tell them the truth because, unfortunately, most of them don't know. And if you just send them this, they'll understand that, you know what? Even if they want to hang out, they can always do it at a different day. They don't have to do it at a day that their ancestors were murdered. And for those of us that are saying, hey, listen, maybe we're not supposed to, rebuke people. Well, here you go. This is a mitzvah. Just like not eating pig is a mitzvah that you're not allowed to do, not rebuking is also. You must rebuke. It's one of the 613 mitzvot. There's no other way. This is not This is not my creation. Hashem didn't ask me for permission of whether to write this or not. This is a mitzvah in the Torah. And just to give you an idea of what happened when you don't do it, then you just go to Parashat Balak, the book of Numbers, Bamidbar. And you go to the Parashat Balak, which is the time where Am Yisrael unfortunately sinned with immodesty. Immodest women, they went with the immodest goyot and they let them into the camp. And we all know the story of what happens there. And Hashem tells Moshe in chapter 25, verse 4, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, Kach et kol rashi ha'am ve'oka otam. Hashem says to Moses, take all the leaders of the people and hang them before Hashem against the sun. Why is it taking the leaders? All the people sinned. Did anybody ever ask this question? Why is Hashem telling Moshe, go hang the leaders? He's not. The people are sinning. There's thousands of people are sinning. Why don't you tell, go kill the people, go punish the people, go do something to the people? He goes, no. Hashem says, go take the leaders. Hang them first, then we'll deal with the people. Why? Because the leaders knew the truth, and they didn't rebuke. They didn't fulfill the mitzvah, v'ocheach tocheach et amitecha. And as it says in the Gemara Masechet Shabbat, page 54, a person who does not rebuke his brother or sister, his fellow, when he knows the truth, takes the sin upon himself. Meaning, you see somebody violating Shabbat, you don't tell him you're not allowed to violate Shabbat, you become officially a mechalel Shabbat, even if you keep in Shabbat lemehadrin. You see a woman that's not modest, you don't tell her, you don't tell your girlfriend. This is obviously for women to do, not for men. Men can't go to other women and tell them they're not modest unless their wife is next to them and they can do something in a modest way. But most importantly, a woman to another woman sees a friend, you're not modest, you don't do it, you in Shamayim will be judged as a not modest woman, Hashem Yirachem. And here we know that our brothers and sisters are about to make a giant sin of Chilul Hashem, a giant sin of Chilul Hashem, of celebrating Hitler. Celebrating Hitler's birthday, Hitler with just a different name. His name is Sylvester. Celebrating his birthday with L'chaim and go and this and that and all this stupidity because we don't know. So be a good leader. You don't have to be a leader of hundreds or thousands or millions. You could be a leader of two. You and your wife. You and your friend. You and your child. We don't all have to be Moshe Rabbeinu. But if you know a little bit of information, you know a little bit of truth, please share it. Our nation, our history, and our future depends on it. May Hashem continue to bless all of you, to see the truth, to fulfill the truth, and to spread it too. Kol Tuv.